A ring that can control demons, flying carpets, and esoteric architecture. The story of Solomon is surrounded by myth and mystery. A wise king witnessed the glory of the Lord and was blessed beyond measure with heavenly wisdom. In a time of peace and prosperity, Israel spirals into a den of idolatry. Despite his gifted wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, Solomon bows himself before idols and loses favor in the sight of the Most High.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ancient Echoes. My name is Bronson Long. My brother's name is Austin. Thank you for our returning viewers. If you are new here, please hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate all of your support for the channel. We're growing every day, putting out new content with reaction videos, live streams, Bible commentary. And tonight we're going through a really cool episode. Austin's put a lot of work in preparing this thing tonight. And our audience actually voted for this. So Austin, man, what are we doing tonight, and what you got in store for us?
Welcome, everybody. It's about time. We are doing Solomon tonight. You guys voted for it, so we're going to bring it to you. There's all kinds of things we're going to be getting into tonight, guys. We're going to start with early life, and then we're going to work into more biblical commentary about Solomon and more historical commentary, and then we're going to get into a little bit more of the esoteric side. Now, there is going to be some things towards the end of this video that we do not endorse, but we always try to bring all sides of the story to you guys and give you a full encompassing, idea of what we're talking about. So we're going to start off with the Bible like we always do, and then we're going to move on after that, and stick around towards the end if you're interested in the esoteric stuff. If you're not interested in it, then you may want to just skip that back in, because there's going to be some crazy stuff we get into. We got a lot of clips, a lot of pictures, a lot of stuff going on tonight, guys. So this is going to be a long one, so strap in with us and let's get to it.
Let's do it, man. The man, the myth, the legend, Solomon himself. Wow. Yeah, man. He's such a cool character in the Bible, dude. I'm really excited to get into this. One episode almost doesn't do it justice, to be honest with you. It's just,
we may have to break this down in a couple parts because it's going to be a whole lot tonight.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start off with the origins of Solomon. His father was David and his mother was Bathsheba. Do you want to read a little bit of this, Bronson?
Yeah, man. So this is your narrative here. We're starting off in 2 Samuel. This is chapter 11. David has already been named an anointed king and has been accepted to be king. So this is post-Saul as of this point. And if I'm not mistaken, Samuel's already passed away too, seeing as we're in the second book. There's a time of war here. And this is when everybody goes to battle. David is still at home, right? It says right here in the first verse that David tarried still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass in the evening tide that David arose from off of his bed, and he walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" And David sent messengers and took her, and she came into him, and she lay with her. And she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. The woman conceived and sent and told David and said, "I am with child." And this is where it gets crazy, man. David ends up bringing Uriah home, trying to get him a little bit drunk, trying to get him to sleep with his wife. And Uriah, man, he's not doing it, bro. When he finds out, David says, "Uriah, you went not down into your house. Why didn't you do that?" And Uriah says unto David, the ark and Israel and Judah abides in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As thou livest and as thy soul liveth, I will not do this thing.
Yeah.
That's mad respect for that, man. Really, it is super duper respectful. So David tells him to stay here one more night, and he doesn't do what David was planning him to do, and so he sends him back with a letter in his own hand to give to Joab. And with that letter, he hands it to Joab, and it finds out that you should set Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle and retire from him that he may be smitten and die. And Joab does just that. And so he puts him where he's supposed to be, and he dies. And once he dies, Bathsheba has her time of mourning. And after she has her time of mourning, David sent for her. So here we go. When the wife of Uriah heard that her husband was dead, she mourned. And when the mourning was past, David sent and fetched her to his house, and she became his wife and bare him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. And we know that God's going to take the life of the child. And David fasts and does everything he can. When he finished fasting, his servants, see him eating, and they're like, "What are you doing, bro? Why did you fast when he was, alive, and now that he's dead, you're going to eat food?" And David says, "While the child was yet alive, I fasted and wept. For I said, who can tell whether God will be gracious to me that the child may live? But now he is dead. Wherefore should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me." Which is just so deep. 2 Samuel 12:24. David comforted Bathsheba his wife, and went in unto her, and lay with her, and she bare a son, and he called his name Solomon, and the Lord loved him. And so that's the beginning of Solomon's story, man. It's from the beginning, this dude has already got just a legendary tale. I think that's
before we go any further. Let's go back to right where we were.
Sure.
Or Nathan also calls him Jedediah.
Yeah. That's true.
Right there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent by the hand of Nathan the prophet, and he called his name Jedediah because of the Lord. So that Solomon also has the name of Jedediah in here. So I also wanted to point that out. Not many people do.
Right. Yeah. He's the man of many names.
Now there's a struggle, after David dies. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. And towards 1 Kings, yeah?
Yes.
All right. So David in his old age, he's stricken in years. I'm sure most people know the story pretty well. He has to have somebody lay with him and keep him warm. And when he starts to die, we end up having a big problem here. So Adonijah, who's the son of Haggith, exalteth himself and saying, I will be king. And he prepared himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. And his father had not displeased him at any time, saying, Why have you done this? And he also was a very goodly man, and his mother bare him after Absalom. And he conferred with Joab. That's the name of the general that was on the battlefield with Uriah.
Joab backed him.
Mm-hmm, exactly right. We've got quite the schism here. Right. And they followed Adonijah and helped him. But Zadok the priest and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, which is the mighty man. Just check out our cryptid video. Benaiah had hands. And Nathan the prophet and Shimei and Ray and the mighty men which belonged to David, they were not with Adonijah. Some people were just super duper loyal to David, man.
Now the Zadok the priest, we're gonna see later on that his line actually will join in with Solomon's line.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Adonijah ends up making himself a bit of a sacrifice here at Enrogel. And he called all his brethren, the king's son, and all the men of Judah and the king's servants. So he's gathering everybody together in Israel, acting like as if it's, his time to inherit the throne. And Nathan, the prophet, and Benaiah, the mighty man, and Solomon, he didn't invite. So Nathan finds out about it, and him and Bathsheba come up with a little bit of a plan here. And so they end up coming into David. When she says, And now behold, Adonijah reigns, and now, my lord the king, thou knowest it not. Remember, he gave a promise saying that Solomon was supposed to be the first king. And thou, my lord, O king, the eyes of Israel are upon you, that thou shouldest tell them who shall sit on the throne. Might be the Lord my king after him. And the king sware and said, As the Lord liveth, that hath redeemed my soul out of all distress, even as I swear unto thee by the Lord God of Israel, saying, Assuredly Solomon thy son shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne in my stead. Even so will I certainly do this day. So we end up having a whole issue where the king takes him with everybody goes out with Solomon. They go down to Gihon. Now Joab and all them, they're over in Rogel. They're all going off to Gihon. And let Zadok the priest and Nathan and the prophet anoint him there king over Israel, and blow ye the trumpet. Solomon gets anointed king. And so off the rip, this dude has had a crazy life. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff to cover tonight, so I'm sorry I'm not reading quite as much as what I normally do. I'm sure you're just really missing out on all that. But, I wanted to kind of give you a brief synopsis of the story.
Let's go ahead and talk about this. When Solomon becomes king, it's, most people say he was about 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And his total kingship was 40 years. And so he would have been 55 when he died. And this is just the standard thought. Okay. So everything we're seeing here going on is before Solomon has his 16th birthday.
And Adonijah actually gets to hear them over their partying, and they're like, what's going on? And messengers come up to him and they're like, yeah, Adonijah, David has made Solomon the king. And Zadok's with him, Nathan is with him, Benaiah and Jehoiada are with him. And it's on, bro. Solomon's sitting on the throne of the kingdom right now. And so they're saying, God make the name of Solomon better than thy name, and make his throne greater than thy throne, in reference to David. And the king bowed himself upon the bed. And Adonijah,
all the guests that were with Adonijah were afraid and rose up, and every man went in his own way, so they scattered like roaches. They said, yeah, let's get out of here before we're all dealt with for being treasonous.
Yeah. So David ends up passing away, right? He charges Solomon with his son, and he gives him, a blessing, if you will. And he's saying, keep the statutes, keep the commandments and his judgments of the Lord as written in Moses, and you will prosper in all that you do, wherever you turn. This is just, if you put yourself in the boots of, let's say he is 15. Well, let's say he's 20, right? That's still a young person. And you've got a whole country, generals, mighty men, people who have been in wars, and now you got to lead these guys. And right here it says, do therefore according to thy wisdom. And he's, telling his son that there's a certain man out here I need you to go kill for me real quick. So Solomon's got blood on his hands off the rip. And so he does. And David dies.
Well, let's talk about Joab.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's people that betrayed David.
Mm-hmm, exactly right. David ends up dying, and so Solomon's already killed a man. He's had issues since his birth, right? When Bathsheba came through and Uriah passes away in the battlefield. I mean, and then Adonijah goes into Bathsheba right here, the mother of Solomon, and he tries to hook up a deal with her where he gets married into the family. She says, let Abishag the Shunammite be given to Adonijah thy brother to wife. And Solomon answered and goes, why are you asking me this? Do you want to ask for the kingdom also? it's a good line, because that's what he's asking for. And King Solomon swore by the Lord, saying, God do so to me, and more also, if Adonijah have not spoken this word against his own life. Now therefore, as the Lord liveth, which hath established me and set me on the throne of David my father, and who hath made me an house, and hath promised Adonijah, shall be put to death this day. And so he sends Benaiah, which, boy, if I had a hitman after me like him, it's over for me, bro. he ain't fighting that dude. And he falls upon him, and he's dead, bro. And so you have it right off the rip, and then Joab gets executed too. Solomon comes in here, and he's showing everybody, like, yeah, I'm 15.
It's like it's like the end of, have you ever watched The Godfather?
I was just thinking the same thing. It's like The Godfather.
When Michael takes over and everybody, all the traitors and everything gets wiped out.
Yep. It's just like, that's a really good point. I didn't think about that until right when you started to say it. And Shimei gets executed too. Solomon ain't playing around, man. Okay. And when we come down here, this is just the coolest thing ever. And Solomon said, "Thou hast showed unto thy servant David, my father, great mercy." He's up here, he's made a big sacrifice. He's, trying to get the Lord's attention. Okay. And so what he does, he goes up into Gibeon and he sacrifices there 1,000 burnt offerings, which is just crazy. And in Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give thee." Now, this here, I just have so much respect for, man. He's looking at this country full of people, and he's like, I'm supposed to judge this? You know what I mean? Some people just love the idea of being a king and being a ruler and being in charge of things. And Solomon's looking at it and going, dude, this means that if I'm going to be a judge, how great should my judgment be? If I'm going to be in charge, I'm going to be held to such a high standard in the eyes of the Lord. Please just give me wisdom here. If I'm going to be a judge, just let me do this thing the right way. I just have so much respect for that, man. So he looked at it and said, I just want to do a good job because it all relies on me now. I'm in charge of this thing. And so he asked for wisdom, and God says that the speech has pleased the Lord, that Solomon had asked this thing. And God said unto him, because you have asked this thing, and have not asked for thyself a long life, or have asked for riches, or has asked for the life of your enemies, but you asked for yourself understanding to discern judgment, behold, I have done according to thy words. Lo, I give thee a wise and an understanding heart. And this is basically the thesis of tonight's episode right here. So that there was none like thee before thee, neither shall any arise like unto thee. And so he's going to get riches and honor, and there shall not be any among the kings like unto thee all of your days. And if you will walk in my ways, as your father David did, I will lengthen thy days. And Solomon awoke, and it was a dream, and he burnt offerings and made peace offerings. And then we get into just some of the examples of Solomon's judgments here. So Solomon
that's the big part down there. Go back real quick. Yeah.
Right here?
No. To where he says, if you will follow my, there you go. Keep going up. Yeah. To keep my statutes and my commandments, and I will lengthen thy days. Well, God kept his word because he died at 55.
Yep. Absolutely, man. The story of Solomon goes south, and I just hate it for him, dude, because he didn't have an easy start from the beginning. The things they probably said about his mother, I'm sure after with what happened to Uriah, the things people said about his dad, he gets into the kingship, his brother tries to take it from him. He's got to murk people right off the rip. He's got people coming to him with stupid stories about whose baby is who, and he's got to deal with all this nonsense. And inside, I'm sure it's just like, bro, I just want my childhood back. I just want my life, man. And
yeah,
I hate it here.
I mean, he had a lot of wealth, a lot of things. It could have been worse for him, believe me.
It could have been way worse. Yeah, that's very true. Very true. So this is that's our introduction to the video tonight, man, where Solomon, he's blessed with much wisdom, and as a byproduct of his wisdom, he gets a lot of wealth and becomes a king like no other of his time. And so at this point in time, also, we can go any which direction you'd like to go.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about what Solomon wrote in the Bible. We got a couple examples pulled up here, and then we are going to get into what David charged Solomon to do.
Absolutely, man. So here in Psalms 127, this is a verse or a chapter that you had sent me. This is a song of decrees for Solomon, and I can read it if you want me to. It's a very short.
No, it's okay. It's just wanted to show examples of some of the writings of Solomon. You have Psalms 127, Psalm 72. A misconception, especially with younger Christians, is that David wrote all the Psalms. That is not the case. These are two chapters that were written by Solomon. Asaph wrote a lot of it. Even some of the Jewish commentators say that Melchizedek and Noah and Adam wrote some of the Psalms. It was not just David. David wrote a great big portion of them, but even here, there's two of them by Solomon. We also have Proverbs was written by Solomon, and most people say Ecclesiastes.
Yeah. I would give a large portion of that to Solomon. I mean, whether or not that's true or not, it just seems appropriate. Of course, you have the Song of Solomon, and those things that are there. There is a verse in 1 Kings chapter 4 verse 32 that gives a number of just how much Solomon has been attributed. I'll read it real quick, just so
let's do that.
Yeah, but it's just in the next chapter here. It's pretty high number. Now, I don't know if they're breaking this up by sentences, verses, chapters, books, whatever, but the numbers themselves are, rather impressive. This is in reference to Solomon, and it says, "And he spake 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. Now, again, there's only 31 chapters in Proverbs. Ecclesiastes, if there's more than 25 chapters in Ecclesiastes, I'd be shocked. Song of Solomon is 11 chapters or something like that.
And these are just the canonical texts that he's attributed with it within the Bible. There's also a lot of esoteric texts that are attributed to him. There's some that I believe it's in the Catholic canon. The Wisdom of Solomon. I think we have that pulled up here too. The Wisdom of Solomon would be another book by him that's kind of in the more along the lines of biblical writings. Yeah. And then you have a lot of craziness that we're going to get into at the end of the video. A lot of stuff attributed to him. Solomon, and we've done videos on Nimrod. Solomon and Nimrod, almost all secret societies take some kind of knowledge back to one of those two, if not both. Most of the time, both. A lot of foundations for witchcraft are attributed to Solomon. There's a lot of things attributed to Solomon, but just for the biblical and more in the apocryphal texts, like the Wisdom of Solomon here, that's pretty much it there. Well, let's go ahead and get into what David charged Solomon with.
So he goes into Gibeon and sacrifices there. For there was a great high place, but there was no place for them to make sacrifice here, right here in verse 2. Only the people sacrificed in high places because there was no house built unto the name of the Lord in those days. Now, David spent a large portion of his life wanting to build a home for God, if you will. They have kingdoms and places where they get to live in palaces. And right here you can see that 7 years he reigned in Hebron, and 33 years he reigned in Jerusalem. And I think it bothered David deeply that he's, been made this king, and yet the Ark of the Covenant rested inside of a tent. And he wanted to make a place to put the Ark of the Covenant. And what God ended up telling him is that, nah, you're a man of war. You know what I'm saying? Your hands are covered in blood. It's just not for you to do. And so afterwards, Solomon ends up taking up this dream that David has, and takes on this mighty task of building a temple, a home, a building, a piece of architecture that's supposed to be worthy enough to, be a home for God within itself. So there's a man out here who has a lot of love for King David, and his name is Hiram, and he is the king of Tyre. And if you've watched some of our geographical episodes and some of our lineage episodes, Tyre's not too far up the way. It was a coastal city, and Solomon sends a little letter to him and saying, "You know how David my father could not build a house unto the name of the Lord his God, for the wars which are about him on every side, until the Lord put him under the soles of his feet." Now, I'm just going to take a second. I know this video is about Solomon, but I got to do it. You put your enemies, you're going to sit here by my side until your enemies become your footstool. Once the enemies become your footstool, New Jerusalem and everything comes back down. This temple is so symbolic for so much stuff, man. It's just amazing. So I'm just going to let that go there. That's not this episode. That's not this episode. All right. Thou knowest how that David, my father, could not build a house because of all the wars that were on every side. All right. That's enough. Until the Lord put him under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God had given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrent. And behold, I purpose to build a house unto the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spake unto David my father, saying, Thy son, whom I will set upon thy throne in thy room, he shall build a house unto my name.
Solomon eventually ended up forcibly conscripting labor from the Israelites. Also, wasn't a big hit with the people.
Yeah, it gets pretty bad there, man.
All right.
Matter
Well,
of fact,
before we get into this, we have a virtual tour that we're going to give you of this temple that he's building, and then we can get into a little bit of the descriptions of it. But let's go ahead and get into this. And we were kind of taken back, but I guess when you see these like winged creatures with a human face, we believe that this is what they are likening it unto a cherubim. You'll see it on the walls and everything. And we're not saying it's right. We're just saying this is the best model that we could find. It kind of took us back to, but that's what it's supposed to be representing as cherubim. And you'll see in the description we'll read later that if that is indeed the case, then it's pretty accurate. So don't be taken back. I know it looks very Egyptian, but I think that's just their representation of cherubim. Just wanted to give that preface before we start. But let's go ahead and get into it, guys.
here we go. Excellent. So we're gonna have to stop it right here just so we can give our commentary real quick. That way we can avoid any type of copyright strikes from YouTube.
Oh, if
So
you look right there, if you go ahead and go back to the door.
sure.
Yeah, if you look right there, if you'd like to just with the cursor mark, yeah, that would be trying to represent a cherubim, and then you have the open flower, and then what was the other one?
Palm trees.
The palm tree. Okay, sorry, man, my eyes are terrible. But yeah, that's but going back to that, that's the winged figure right there that looks like something from like the gates of Babylon, at least in my mind. I think that's supposed to be representing a cherubim, and you'll once we open these doors, you'll see it all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see them on the carts out here with the bulls and the oxen right here.
Yeah.
This it's I'm sure he used AI to do it. If you've ever tried messing with AI, it can be a little bit tricky sometimes, but this is the courtyard, man. This is where people came out. This is where your common men were actually allowed to go to. So when they talk about being unclean and everything, this wall right here, surrounded the temple, you were unclean, you were not passing through that wall. It wasn't going to happen. And it's really, honestly, it's a beautiful place here. You can see these are the horns of the altar, right? So this is where that man actually grabbed a hold of it and was like, dude, if Solomon's cool, he ain't gonna kill me here. And so it's pretty cool, man. Now obviously the temple hadn't quite been built yet, but it was tabernacle and all that. This is sort of the same sort of build that people have done. You have your bulls here that face the cardinal directions, and the brazen sea that's made for washings, and they wash their hands in these places. It's honestly, man, I would have loved to just go back in time just to see what it looked like, man. Just to see what that looked like. But that may be enough commentary in case you wanted to add something to it or whatever.
No, man, let's check out the inside.
Here it goes.
Wow.
Man, that is just so cool, man. You see your inner court. It's just the whole thing's just awesome, man. And we may even I might just clip this by itself and make this a standalone reaction video because this is just so cool. Where when you get into this inside right here, it's just amazing the detail and what I would call the symbology or allegory for the throne room in heaven. To the best of my ability, where the incense burns before the Lord at all times. You see the candlesticks or the lampstands that we see in the book of Zechariah. Just a little fun fact: these menorahs have 7 candlesticks, not 9. Just gonna throw that out there. And the fact that everything is plated in gold is just marvelous to me. I mean, it's just amazing. The showbread with the table of showbread. David ends up getting a little snack one day. You know what I'm saying? When he's on the run from Saul. You know,
that was an excellent example of how the law could be adapted to preserve human life. Preserving life is number one.
Absolutely, man.
That could be a teaching on its own, but neither here or there. Well, I'll tell you what, man. Let's go to the image where it shows kind of how it was set up with the palace and the temple and all that. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's wow,
I don't technically agree with the how the cherubims look, but that's just me.
You know what's weird about that is that if you look on the Ark of the Covenant that's in that video, the cherubims that are on the Ark of the Covenant don't look like that at all.
Right, that's what I mean. Sorry, let me turn my camera back on. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I mean. Is that the ones on the Ark are how they were described in the Bible? So to make, it describes it in detail.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just don't understand how we went from that to some Egyptian looking hybrid, but neither here or there. It does give you a good example of how the temple looked with the Holy of Holies and everything though. So I think that overall is a good video. All right, now we're looking here and you can see where it was set up. You have the temple and the altar, what we just looked at with the inner and outer court, Solomon's palace, and then the house that he built for Pharaoh's daughter, which is a palace unto itself. You have the house of the Lebanon forest with 45 cedar pillars. The pillar hall. Yeah, so that's the whole temple and palace complex there.
Yeah. This man, so many questions that I have that surround the entire building. You know what I mean? Just everything. I understand having a palace for royalty and for a court and judgment and whatnot, but perhaps you have an idea or somebody in the comments has some good ideas on, is there any type of, maybe I'm just digging for the wrong question here, but what is the heavenly symbolism for these things here, these pillar halls? And
I don't know that there is. I believe the heavenly, just my personal opinion, I could be wrong, but I believe the heavenly symbolism stops at the temple complex.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair to me. There's a
that's always been my thought on it. Like I said, let us know in the comments if I'm wrong. I don't mind being wrong. Just let me know why.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. And we appreciate that type of stuff. Somebody corrected me the other day. I think it was on our Abraham video, our first initial video in the Abraham series. I said that Bethel was Bethlehem, and somebody corrected me.
Yeah, I almost said something during the video, but I think we moved on to something else. But no, they were right.
Yeah, they most certainly were. And so that's great to have, man. I mean, that doesn't bother me at all, dude. Now, another question I have concerning everything with the Ark of the Covenant, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to ask this question, is, when you get that commandment that says you're not supposed to make any graven images on anything that is in the earth, on the earth, or above the earth, I wonder why he was okay, or is okay, I guess, with having the cherubim up there. I mean,
I believe, and this is going back to what we were just talking about the temple being heavenly symbolism, and it talks about cherubim and the beasts that are around the throne and everything else like that. I think it's just supposed to symbolize what the throne room is like.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always kind of wondered that myself, because I don't even like statues of anything. You know what I mean? And being in America, we have statues of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. And I'm more on the conservative side, so I have no problem with Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or anything like that. But I don't like having statues to them. I don't like having being set up in temples in Washington D.C. I mean, that's what they are. They look like ancient Greek temples, and with these statues in them, basically made for worship. And if you go inside, maybe we'll do it one day because I have video of it when I went there not too long ago of all the quotes on the inside. It's like religious sounding quotes and everything with this big statue right in the middle of Lincoln. And I'm not a big fan of that either. But this was a commandment given by God on how to build this temple. And, the cherubim were also put on the ark. That was, a direct quote from God, to put it there and how to do it. I think it's just supposed to symbolize the throne room in heaven. Same way that the tabernacle was set up. This is just supposed to be instead of, a tent that can be packed up and moved and reset up everywhere. This is supposed to be, a stationary place for the ark, which I've always, held to that this is supposed to be like in heaven.
Right. It's a good answer, man. I was just curious to know your
it's
thoughts.
very similar when you go to the passages about New Jerusalem. You know what I mean? About the outer courtyard and the inner courtyard. Mm-hmm. There's a reason that it was set up this way, and I believe that's why. And the cherubim, being around the throne, that's what I would think. Anyways, that's my best explanation for it.
I love that, man. I saw a different type of depiction done one time by a gentleman named Walter Veith, who, in his opinion, and I think he had a really great, compelling argument for it, that it was more or less in the shape of a cross, that, some of the memorials off to the side were down their own little hallways, and it was really cool. It's really, really cool.
Are you talking about how the 12 tribes were set up around the tabernacle in a cross shape?
Perhaps that's what I'm referring to. Yeah, this was many, many years ago.
I'm trying to remember as well. I know I've seen somebody do that. I can't remember if it was him or not. It could have been Walter Veith. While I may not agree with him on a few things, that is a smart man.
Yeah, very interesting. This is very interesting.
You need to pay attention to this.
I really like the guy, man, but he and everybody else and their grandma has had some type of opinion on this temple, man. Do you want to go into everybody else's opinion on this temple?
Yeah, we're going to get into a little bit of the esoteric stuff here, guys. Like I said, a lot of secret societies and secret orders take a lot of things back to Solomon, and let's show a couple of them. A couple of them. We'll skim over this fairly quickly because we got some of the crazy stuff at the back end of this video.
Sure. So a lot of comparisons here. We're just looking at some of the Mormon stuff, and they're comparing quite a bit of what their Mormon church is like in Salt Lake City over in Utah. What they're making some comparisons here about how it's a center place. It's a fine craftsmanship and dedicatory prayers and things of that nature. And so I don't think it's supposed to be built in the same place, but it's definitely a humongous church where they do a lot of things. If you're unaware, because the Mormons are not something that I'm incredibly studied upon, but there doesn't take much study to know that right there in Utah, Salt Lake, where these churches are, it is an immense amount of money there. Just the building is just crazy. I mean, it's just crazy. But so they're just kind of.
Aren't they supposed to be like going out into space?
Man, I
don't know, man. I've seen so much. So many different theories and so many backstories, and it seems like their theology has changed. And I know. What was his name? Joseph Smith supposedly found some golden tablets and but I mean they do compare it here to the Salt Lake Temple. Now where you get the real comparison that is when we get into Freemasonry.
So I would show that. Getting into what the Jews have to say about it. Naturally they've got much to say. And there's some really neat stuff here. I mean, if you're going to go to anybody about it, I would say go to Christians, go to Jews, and then, naturally your Masons are going to know quite a bit about it as well. But one thing that they bring out here in this article that I found really interesting was just how broken down it is about the Day of Atonement. Because, when we saw in that video, so you have your outer court, right, where you have the brazen bulls and all that stuff. The inside where the altar of incense is constantly burning, and then you have the holiest of all places. That holiest of all places only open once a year, and they kind of break down in this article here in a really neat way, kind of how the layers and timing is represented. Because there's a burnt offering that burns continuously, the incense offering that burns continuously, offerings that are done only at certain times of the year, offerings that are only done at one time of the year. And it's really interesting, man. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing, but if you'd like to read it, check it out. It's on your jewishvirtuallibrary.org, and it's cool. Here's your biggest fans of the temple here, and this is the Masons, man. Austin, let me just ask you this. Why are the Masons so infatuated with Solomon's temple?
Well, I'll tell you what, we can let's get to that.
Sure.
Let's go to Manly P. Hall.
Yeah.
Unless you see anything here you want to talk about first.
No, it's nothing special. It's the same thing we've already talked about, just with their Masonic twist on it.
All right, let's go to Manly P. Hall, and then we can jump back over to this. All right, so you see here at the beginning, this is from Manly P. Hall, Secret Teachings of All Ages. See page 77. When Solomon, the beloved of God, and you got to remember this is a Mason talking, okay? Builder of the everlasting house and grand master of the lodge of Jerusalem, ascended the throne of his father David, consecrated his life to the erection of a temple to God and a palace for the kings of Israel. So they say that he was the grand master of the lodge of Jerusalem. Okay. So that's the biggest thing. That he was one of the founders of the craft, you could say. I believe that the original Mason, at least they take some of the legends take it back to being Nimrod.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Let's see here.
And there's just a certain infatuation with Solomon. I know I talk about it a lot, but it's all I know, guys. In the world of Japanese martial arts, there's so much attributed to a man named Yamato Musashi that whether it's legend, myth, truth, whatever, if they can't put a name to it, they just put Musashi on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so Solomon's just kind of like that guy.
I have that book sitting right there. Yeah.
Yeah, man. He's they got statues to him over there and everything. And there's a lot of true stories about the guy, but there's so many myths and martial art legends that, I could spend hours talking about it. But if there's no real name that's slapped to it, they just, boom, that's Musashi. And I feel like Solomon gets put that way too sometimes. If you have some esoteric witchcraft, whatever, and you can't quite put a name to it, it's like, well, they're just.
Well, there's always the three they try to put to it: Enoch, Nimrod, and Solomon. Those are the three that they try to tie back to.
Big facts.
Now we can go and look over here at Albert Pike. This is from Morals and Dogma. Talks a little bit about some of the rites here. Now the architect of the temple is a man they call Hiram, not King Hiram, but another Hiram, and they have Hiram Abiff is a big thing in Freemasonry, and we'll talk about a little bit of the ritual here. Yeah, go back up. Back up some. King Solomon right there.
Right here?
Yeah, you see that? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so King Solomon began the building of the temple in the 4th year of his reign on what would be, according to modern calculation, the 21st day of April, and finished it in the 11th year of his reign, the 23rd day of October. The temple begun in the 480th year after the children of Israel had passed the Red Sea. Part of the labor of construction included the building of an artificial foundation on the brow of Mount Moriah. The stones for the temple were hoisted from quarries directly beneath the mountain and were trued before being brought to the surface. The brass and golden ornaments for the temple were cast in molds and in clay between Succoth and Zeradatha, and the wooden parts were all finished before they reached the temple site. The building was put together consequently without sound and without instruments, all its parts fitting exactly without the hammer of contention, the axe of division, or any tool of mischief. And it's
And it goes on. It goes on down there to explain that, but Dagon's temple and the finest structure of Tyre Sidon could not be compared with the eternal God's temple at Jerusalem.
mm-hmm.
It talks about the craftsmen and everything else. Masonic legends of the building of Solomon's temple does not, in every particular parallel the scriptural version, especially in those portions relating Hiram Abiff. According to the biblical account, this master workman returned to his own country. In the Masonic allegory, he is foully murdered. Okay.
Yes. So if we go back right here and you see this picture right here, Morals and Dogma, there is so much going on in this picture where these three apprentices of Mr. Hiram Abiff, and this is according to the Masonic story now, the legend, if you will, that they want their rank, they want their title, and they want to get their degrees, and he's not giving it to them, and so they kill him, right? And they bury him outside, and they mark the grave with a sprig of what is it, acacia, or yeah. And so they end up finding Mr. Hiram's body, and the master mason on the site gives him the lion's paw, grabs him up by the hand, pulls him out of the grave, and Hiram comes back to life. And so this symbol right here is really interesting because when you go through your Blue Lodge, when you reach what they call the Master Mason level, which is just the 3rd degree in the Blue Lodge, you go through this ritual, if you will, where you're blindfolded and you're pushed down into this net, right? You don't fall hard or whatever, but you're pushed down into this net, and it's supposed to, in my opinion, represent death. And here comes your Master Mason, the guy on site, and he gives you that whatever the lion's paw looks like. I'm not going to pretend to know, and puts you back up onto your feet. And so you're actually kind of doing the Hiram Abiff. You're sort of emulating his death, burial, and resurrection. So
they also have a similar ritual in the Skull and Bones Society out of Yale, to where it's like being a born again ritual, to where you're put in a coffin and then you're grabbed back out. A lot of, like when George H.W. Bush was asked if he was a Christian, and he says, "Well, I've been born again." That's what he was referencing, was that rebirth ritual with the skull and bones that has a lot of similarities to the Hiram Abiff and that 3rd degree ritual that's done at the Master Mason ceremony. Yeah.
That's really cool. I didn't know that at all. And when I say really cool, I mean it's really bad, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but I mean, it does tie together.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that at all. So, I mean, Hiram is a real character. I remember reading the Bible the first time and just sort of looking over this guy, looking through what was going on with Solomon. I was just so focused on Solomon. I just, Hiram, Tyre, whatever. And then I learned not everything, but a few things about Freemasonry. And then when I went back and read the Bible the second time, I was like, oh, dude, he's actually he's in the story. He's actually in the biblical narrative.
Yeah.
And,
it seems to be two different Hirams.
Okay.
One is the king, and then one is the builder.
Yeah, right. Yes, I agree with that. And so,
well, do you want to show anything else from those Masonic pages that we pulled up, or?
Not really, man. I mean, this stuff is so readily accessible to everybody. And honestly, when you read this stuff, I mean, one thing, like Austin, you said it to me the other day, these guys are so astute. I mean, they're so well studied.
Yeah.
Right here in the beginning, when they talk about the divine name, the tetragrammaton and the sacred name and all that.
It gets into a lot of different Eastern mysticism and stuff like that. But let's go back to the websites before these.
The website, yeah?
Yeah, this is from the Grand Lodge of Ohio, and that talks about the Masonic legend of Hiram Abiff.
Mm-hmm.
And the one before that is, talking about the temple, some, I believe.
Yeah. It's It's pretty crazy, man. Right up here is when they kind of
Okay, got you.
Right.
The framework for self-improvement. It's always about self.
It really is, which is so funny because the temple to them is supposed to represent the actual architect of the universe, the architecture.
That's a big key. And we were just reading out of Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma. In Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike says that the god of Freemasonry is Lucifer.
Yeah.
And we could show that if we want, but it's there. It's pretty common knowledge.
Right. Yeah.
So whenever you hear people like Tim Allen, who's professes to be a Christian, but he says, I call him the architect of the universe. Whenever you hear that architect of the universe, it's not talking about the God of the Bible. It's talking about the God of Freemasonry.
Right.
That's not a name, a biblically attributed name to the Most High God. That's who the Freemasons call God.
The Gayatu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But according to Albert Pike, which we were just reading in Morals and Dogma, the God of Freemasonry is Lucifer.
Yeah, and then he's no pushover. He's not like some.
No, Albert Pike is a highly, highly intelligent man.
Yeah,
he's just on the other side of things.
Everyone who this I could be wrong on. I'm not well studied on this matter, but from what I understand, everyone who reaches the rank of 33 degree is gifted the book of Morals and Dogma. You're not forced to read it, but it's there in your hands. And if you chose to read it, you would know. You know what I mean? And so it's there, man. And there's for some reason Solomon is just tied up in all of this, and this temple is tied up in all of this for its aspect of being relayed out like as if the architecture of the universe is supposed to be mirrored with. You have
to wonder because Freemasonry carries a lot of the mysteries. Rosicrucians carry a lot of the mysteries. The Shriners carry mysteries. I mean, there's the Club of Rome carries mysteries. Knights of St. John. All the heavy hitter secret societies. They all carry these mysteries, and you have to wonder how much of them go back to the Knights Templar and what they were able to find in Jerusalem. Because modern day, there's so much political turmoil and religious turmoil in that area around the Temple Mount and around Jerusalem. You can't really do excavations because one group or another is going to lose their mind. You would have to think that some of the last people, maybe not the very last, but some of the last people to really have dig sites here were the Knights Templar, and they had control of Jerusalem for quite a while. Mm-hmm. So you would have to think that they had found something to pass down, some kind of mysteries down to the Freemasonry at the Rosalind Chapel, and I feel like there's something there, man. And I think that could be a big reason why they tie so much back to Solomon.
Yeah,
I believe the actual Masonic temples on the inside are supposed to represent this temple in some sort of way too. I'm not an expert on Freemasonry. I just know a little bit about what I've read and gone through. I've gone through Morals and Dogma quite a bit because there's a lot in there, a whole lot in there. I think me and Brawson just on that one page read for about 30 minutes discussing things, and that was on one page.
Dude, it was bananas the amount of things that he talks about, the symbolism and all that. Right here with Manly P. Hall, I'm pretty sure that this is where I read with what is this, the hidden keys of Freemasonry, the lost keys of Freemasonry.
No, this is in the Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Secret Teachings, thank you. This is where I did read that. Yes, they're supposed to be around the same type of thing where you walk in and the checkered floors and everything. There's supposed to be some type of connection or metaphor between the first temple built by Solomon and Hiram. And so here's some of that story of Hiram here if you guys are interested in that. Now it's very neat, some of the things that you see about the spelling here. I didn't realize just how often these random letters were showing up and Hiram was being spelled so many different ways. And I know it's not necessarily pertinent to this video, but they kind of explain some of these things about what these extra, why they're both capitalized and everything. There's supposed to be special words and pronunciations that bring power, and it's just when you're reading this
down here, the original word Hiram, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right.
Of 3 consonants.
Yeah, then the 3 guys that kill him, yeah, right here with it's got the Kerm, and Karom, and right here when he uses these letters right here, OM, which is supposed to be this really special, powerful word.
Sacred name for God in was it Hindu?
Yeah, when you hear the
Right.
people meditating and they do that sound,
Yeah,
and
you see Manly P. Hall here quoting Albert Pike.
Exactly right. And it's interesting. His 3 killers, Hiram of his 3 killers, each of them have the words Bel in their name. Jubela, Jubelo, and Jubalam. And Bel is the Chaldean god. And I mean, dude, when you're reading this stuff, especially Morals and Dogma, Manly P. Hall is what you would call, what I would call a Masonic philosopher. And so he's going to give you some of the.
Well, he was eulogized when he died as Freemasonry's greatest philosopher.
Yes,
I've read the Secret Teachings of All Ages over the years, bits and pieces here and there, and it's very, very interesting.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
It's really interesting, man. But when you read this,
and also let me just preface this by saying, we're Christians, and if you're a Christian, but if you're not strong in your faith, do not read this book. Do not read it. I use it more as a reference book and looking into like all these different secret societies stuff because I'm interested in it. But I have a firm foundation in the word, and I'm not changing because believe me, if you do not, this will lead you off the right path. So I don't recommend it for anybody who's new in belief or not, grounded in your belief because this and Morals and Dogma will lead you into darkness if you buy into it.
I took a break when you and I were reading it the other night. I don't know if you remember. After a few minutes of doing it, I said, "Hey man, I just need to take a lap around the house real quick. I'm reading this so much that it's starting to make sense. I just need to walk away for a second." Because I mean, they're great liars, man, and they're very, very smart.
They're highly intelligent too. See, it starts talking about Jacques Millet, the last Grandmaster of the Knights Templar. I didn't even realize that was in there. Yeah, there's a reason that these guys are mentioned, and I believe that the Templars found something from Solomon, whether it's a later writing or one of his grimoires from when he was older and was into all kinds of stuff. And he said, there's the widow's son. Is there no mercy for a widow's son? Now, that's referring to Hiram Abiff, but technically all Masons, once they're raised to Master Mason, would be, Hiram, they would be a form of Hiram. So they would be the widow's son. That's another key word there. The architect of the universe and the widow's son.
Right. There's so many deep things in these lines that even people like you and I who know a thing or two about this stuff,
and it's just a thing or two. We do not know the ins and outs of everything. We are not Masons. We don't pretend to know every little thing. We just know some basic stuff. You see Sir Francis Bacon mentioned here. We talked about the Rosicrucians a little bit. That's a Rosicrucian.
Yeah.
Right.
This is
the New Atlantis. Yeah, we could go down this forever, man. Let's
get out of this.
There's all kinds of stuff here to tie into it.
It's crazy.
Well,
man.
Let's change gears a little bit. We've covered a little bit of the esoteric stuff there. Let's get back into a little bit of history with Solomon and some of his wives. Now he had a lot of wives, if I remember correctly, 700 wives and 300 concubines. Is that correct?
I think that's spot on, man. Yeah. Yep, spot on. So we'll reference the scripture real quick, but I imagine if you made it this far in the video, you made it through that just now. You're probably pretty familiar with some of these stories here, but just in case you're not, we'll talk a little bit about everything. But Solomon does have a lot of wives. I think we've already kind of seen some of that. This is one of the first things that he does, man. This is like right before he makes this big sacrifice we talked about where God shows himself and he asks for wisdom. So I'll read this. It's just one verse. 1 Kings 3:1. And Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he had made an end of building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall of Jerusalem round about. So this is it's a strategic alliance. I mean, we see lots of rulers doing this type of thing, and it's a wise thing to do. Your kings and your people aren't going to come kill me because my people are now technically by genetics your people too. And so keeps the peace, man.
Yeah, it helped establish that trade too to get those horses and chariots, which was very important for military and important for trade because the Hittites were buying them up like hotcakes.
Mm. And who are the Hittites? The Hittites are buying them from Egypt, and so Solomon
No,
wants to.
the Hittites were buying them from Solomon.
Oh, okay, understood. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
From what I understand, I've looked, going over this week and looking into everything. That's what I've seen. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But that's what I've seen, that he was selling them to the Hittites, and I believe the Sidonians as well. But that was a little bit less sure.
That's cool because in our video we did on the sons of Japheth and Canaanites, excuse me, when we looked at the Hittites, they were one of the first of the languages, the Indo-European style languages we looked at, but they were talked about being archers on horses and chariot and things of that nature. And so that'd be kind of cool to think that perhaps that Pharaoh of Egypt may have been providing those chariots for a long time. And so here comes Solomon to swoop in, make a strategic alliance, and now he's got his touch in on selling those chariots to the Hittites. Is that
Solomon had a chance in a lot of things. Also, any kind of trade that came through the region, he would tax.
Mm-hmm.
There was, a lot of, Solomon, you had the ships going to Ophir also, and you had ships in the Arabian Ocean, ships in the Red Sea, the maritime trade. Solomon was also big, and he was big commerce, big business.
Yeah. Wow. It's just crazy, man, that he started off doing so great, dude. That's just what's crazy is that economy and everything was so great, and then ends up what his son says is just bananas about him. But
well, let's go to the verse where it talks about how he was taking many wives, because he took, like we said, a lot of women. There's a lot of women.
Yeah. If you'll just allow me to click a few times. Sorry if you hear me.
It could be 11, right?
I think so. So just this first verse here, but King Solomon loved many strange women with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites.
All right, now in the chapter right before there, let's talk about a specific one that he had an affinity for.
Man, I would love for you to take the reins on this. I'll read whatever you want me to read, but this is one that I am so interested in, always been interested in.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, we have a clip, guys, and let's go ahead and just watch some of this clip, and then we'll come back and cover this verse and get a good understanding of the situation going on here with the Queen of Sheba and Solomon.
Awesome. Can I get a quick sound check?
You're good. We didn't mean for Robert Seffer's rendition of
While many people claim that history has been whitewashed, archaeological and genetic evidence shows that a large part of history is being painted black. The Queen of Sheba is one of the most elusive biblical characters of all. According to scriptures, the Queen of Sheba, whose real name remains disputed, voyages to Jerusalem to conduct a meeting with the wise King Solomon. Islamic folklore holds that the queen's name was Bilqis, and here she is depicted. Her arrival is overseen by a plenitude of servants. She also carries large quantities of gemstones, gold, and spices to the Israeli kingdom. According to a 14th century Ethiopian tomb, the Kebra Nagast, meaning the glory of kings, the Queen of Sheba was an ancient Ethiopian queen by the name of Makeda. She lived in the city of Aksum, the UNESCO-protected ruins of which can nowadays be seen close to Ethiopia's northern border. Makeda would spend several months in Jerusalem, and before her departure home, Solomon invited her to sleep in the same part of his castle where his sleeping quarters were. However, both of them gave terms for such a sleeping arrangement. From Makeda's side, that Solomon would not approach to have intercourse with her. From Solomon's side, that the visiting queen would not take anything that belongs to him in their dormitories. These terms were broken, however. For dinner, Solomon asked his servants to prepare a dish that was very salty and spicy, and alongside Makeda's bed, water was placed for the evening, for when she wakes up thirsty for the dinner. When the queen indeed woke up and drank water from the bowl during the night, Solomon entered her chamber and indicated that his water had been taken. The product of the evening would be a male offspring. As Ethiopian tradition tells us, the child of Sheba and Solomon was Emperor Menelik I, the founder of the Solomonid Dynasty. Menelik,
pause right there.
who traveled to Jerusalem to see his father.
All right, now I don't know if you guys caught that or not. Menelik was supposedly the offspring of this union, and he founded the Solomonic Dynasty. So they took the dynasty of this kingship that lasted almost 3,000 years, and they used Solomon's name when it was, at its inception. So this was their belief in Ethiopia, is that their kings were direct descendants from Solomon. All right, go ahead.
Is credited for obtaining the Ark of the Covenant and bringing it to Ethiopia, either as an endowment or as a theft. To this date, many Ethiopians consider that the biblical artifact can be found inside the chapel of the tablet that is next to the Church of Mariam Sion in Aksum. Replicas of the Ark can be found at other churches in the country too. The Kebra Nagast remains one of the most authentic and significant texts to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The text indeed names the alluring queen and pins down her lands as those belonging to ancient Ethiopia. Despite that, a great many contemporary scholars are confident that the Queen of Sheba was, in fact, a monarch of Yemeni province. That's just across the Red Sea on the Arabian Peninsula, and also brings us to the Quran interpretation of the story. An important aspect of why the Queen of Sheba would have come from Yemen is her name. About the time King Solomon reigned, which is around 970 to 931 BC, the ancient Ethiopian and Yemeni territories fell under the dominion of one dynasty. Its seat likely found in Yemen. This ancient kingdom was called Saba, and many historians interpret Saba as Sheba. The Quran names the kingdom's queen Bilqis. In this variant of the story, the two biblical characters never became intimate. Perhaps one day, archaeologists will stumble upon new evidence to shed light on the story. But the genetic evidence so far has yielded some interesting results. Researchers at the University of Cambridge have mapped out the earliest ever African genome from 4,500-year-old Ethiopia, and to their surprise, up to 1/4 of African DNA has come from interbreeding with Western Eurasians, such as people from Britain, Europe, and the west of Asia. Scientists believe that most of the interbreeding happened following a mysterious migratory event which occurred around 3,000 years ago, suggesting that large numbers of people moved into Africa to account for their presence in the DNA of modern Africans, accounting for around 1/3 of the population. According to Dr. Andrea Manica, senior author of the study from the University of Cambridge's Department of Zoology, and I quote, "Roughly speaking, the wave of West Eurasian migration into the Horn of Africa could have been as much as 30% of the population that already lived there, and that, to me, is mind-blowing." End quote. Archaeological evidence also shows the migration coincided with the arrival of Near Eastern crops into Africa, such as wheat and barley, suggesting the migrants helped develop new forms of agriculture in the region.
Hey, that's good, brother.
Man, that is an incredibly interesting video there. Just the thought of, we always talk about how so many people have Genghis Khan's DNA. I just wonder how many people are walking the planet that have got Solomon's DNA.
Well, with that many wives, it'd have to be a substantial chunk of people.
Yes.
We talked about some in our Japheth, Ham, and Shem videos, how naturally thinking you would think a third of the earth for each, is the descendants. But I mean, they're only said to have had, at least, from what I understand, one wife. They could have had more, but from what I understand, one wife. Solomon had a lot of wives and a lot of concubines, guys. So I imagine he has seed everywhere. And we're talking about some of these other women. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those children were passed to the fire to Moloch. A lot of dark stuff later on in Solomon's life. But yeah, let's go ahead and read this a little bit. Just we're kind of graze over a little bit of this Queen of Sheba. And then we have another clip we'd like to show you guys right after that to kind of talk about this dynasty in Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is very interesting. That's where we get our translation of Enoch from, was from the Giz text, or the Giez text from Ethiopia, because the book of First Enoch is still in their canon.
Absolutely.
So you have the Ark and you have the book of Enoch down there. It's very interesting. So let's read a little bit of the biblical content here, because he touched on the Ethiopian from the Kabr Nagast and touched on the Quran and the Islamic tradition behind it. So let's get into the Bible.
Sure. So when the Queen of Sheba, this is 1 Kings chapter 10, starting in verse 1. And when the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. And she came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels, and bare spices, and married much gold and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. And Solomon told her all her questions. There was not anything hid from the king, which he told her not. And when the Queen of Sheba had seen all of Solomon's wisdom, and the house that he had built, the meat of the table, the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, his cupbearers, and the ascent by which he went up unto the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. And she said to the king, It was a true report that I heard in mine own land of thy acts and of thy wisdom. Howbeit, I believed not the words until I came, and my eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not even told to me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceedeth the fame which I heard. Happy are your men, happy are your servants, which stand continually before you, and that hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord thy God, which delighteth in thee, to set thee on the throne of Israel. Because the Lord loved Israel forever, therefore made he thee king, to do judgment and justice. She gave the king 120 talents of gold, spices of a very great store, and precious stones. And there came no more such abundance of spices of these, than which the Queen of Sheba had given unto Solomon. The navy also of Hiram that brought the gold from Ophir brought in from Ophir great plenty and almug trees and precious stones. And so the king made these almug trees pillars, we saw those earlier, for the house of the Lord and for the king's house. Harps also and psalteries for singers, and there came no such almug trees, nor were seen unto this day. And King Solomon gave unto the Queen of Sheba all her desire, whatsoever she asked, beside that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. So she turned and went to her own country, she and her servants. And this is one of them things, man, I'd love to kind of pick your brain on some of this, because the Queen of Sheba is just, like Mr. Sepher said, so elusive. You get this, and she just seems like such a boss, like just a big baller. And I wonder what some of these questions are that she asks. I mean, when it says hard questions, when the Bible says that, I mean, dark sayings and dark questions, you see that type of verbiage used in Proverbs, and it could just mean, deep conversation. But I'm wondering if she's got questions about Trinity, Holy Spirit, what is she asking them?
Who knows? She's probably it could be just riddles. It could be anything, just to test the wisdom. It could be something that's simple but has a profound meaning behind it. It could be anything.
Yeah, for sure. I was at a place in a time, and maybe you were too, for a long time, where I was really leaning towards the opinion that the Queen of Sheba wasn't even human. When we see that verse that there was no more spirit left in her, I mean, maybe I'm crazy for that, but I was like, who is this person, bro? And I
always took it, she almost had like a haughty spirit about her, that she didn't believe what she was told, but after he'd answer all the questions, she had almost like she had kind of an attitude But after she had, like a disbelieving attitude about what she had heard, and then after he answered the question, that attitude was gone.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, once you showed me a lot of this stuff that we're about to get into, I really fell back from that belief because I don't know. Like he said, elusive is a great word. When I read it, I was like, man,
This is another example of. Well, let's do it here. Let's go to this chapter in the NLT.
Sure.
The verbiage is just so different from the King James to modern day English that it's very hard to understand some of this stuff. Like the spirit is not in it or anymore. Like that could lead to believe, like you were talking about. I
may have passed it. Yeah, I passed it. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. She came to test him. She was overwhelmed. She was so amazed. Am I just overlooking it? Because I'm not even seeing anything that I can compare.
No, it's already said it just in layman's terms. Is that she was kind of unbelieving. Then she said, "Oh, well, everything you said was true," just like I was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's real interesting, man. I'd seen, I believe it may have been, I don't want to use the wrong name on this, but I think it was like a David Carrico teaching one day where he had talked about the Queen of the South being some type of, in the Revelation, it talks about the kings of the North and all that stuff. And he was saying, he'd put together something that was kind of sounding like as if she may have been some type of angelic being or spiritual being, hybrid being, something like that.
It was just a human. It was a queen. Yeah. No, I don't think there's anything else there. There's no kind of Nephilim action going on here. There's none of that. I'll tell you what, man. Let's go into our next clip, talking about the Queen of Sheba and possible links to Ethiopia.
Let's do it.
And this is from a tour, guys. Could we zoom in just a little bit on this, or?
This is a tricky one to do that too, because you end up losing.
Yeah. Okay.
That's about as good as I'll get it there.
Gotcha.
Came from Ethiopia, that's our belief. And the Queen of Ethiopia, they had a son called Menelik the First. In the Ethiopian tradition, he was the first king. Therefore, since then, our kings said they're descendants of King Solomon and Queen of Sheba. So one of the ways that they show their descendants is the Star of David. They're not Jewish, but they're showing their descendants from King Solomon. And also in Addis, in a bunch of places, you'll see a lion, so the Lion of Judah. So that's our kings. Even here, we'll see a cage, like an area where they kept lions for that.
So in addition to this, the dynasty itself, it calls Solomonic dynasty. So as the Jew explained, because of that, Ethiopian kings claim that we are the descendant of King Solomon. That's why they put the Star of David over here.
Since King Solomon and Queen of Sheba, and Sheba came from Ethiopia, that's our belief. And the Queen of Ethiopia, they had a son called Menelik the First.
Man, that is very crazy. And I know there was a time where I was closer to these guys in age, and I too probably would have been staring at the floor or flirting or doing something stupid. But right now, at the age I'm at, I would love.
Yeah, they have no idea what they're looking at.
No.
There's many things in my life too. I'm like, man, I was so stupid. Why didn't I pay attention? Oh my gosh.
Oh,
all right. So here we're going to talk a little bit about Menelik the First. Now, this is the supposed son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba.
Mm-hmm. It's just reading from the very top here. Menelik the First was the legendary first emperor of Ethiopia, according to the Kabra Nagast, a 14th century national epic in the 10th century BC. He is said to have inaugurated the Solomonic Dynasty of Ethiopia, so named because Menelik I was the son of the biblical king Solomon of ancient Israel and of Makeda, the queen of Sheba. And so this is their history. This is what they believe. It's no different than you and I saying, we're Irish and Norwegian, man. It's a little bit of native. That's just what they believe. According to the medieval, sorry?
No, I was gonna go ahead, man.
Yeah. According to the medieval Ethiopian book of the Kibra Nagas, written in Ge'ez, am I saying that right? Ge'ez?
Yes. From what I know, I'm not a pronunciation wizard over here.
Yeah. Oh, geez. In 1321, his name is, son of the Wise. That's what we'll call him. His name was Son of the Wise. He was conceived when his father Solomon tricked his visiting mother, the Queen of Sheba, into sleeping with him. The story that Robert Sefer gave, I don't know why, I believe it. It just seems so Solomon-like to not just believe it. His mother raised him as a Jew in her homeland, and he only traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father for the first time when he was in his 20s. While his father begged Menelik to stay and to rule over Israel, Menelik told him that he wanted to return home. Thus, Solomon sent many Israelites with him to aid him in ruling according to biblical standards, which were aggrieved by being exiled over. One recount is that King Solomon gave the Ark of the Covenant to his son, while another states that Menelik and his Israelite companions actually took the Ark with them, and Solomon attempted to regain the Ark but was unable to, due to its supernatural properties aiding Menelik. Upon the death of his mother, or upon her abdication in his favor, Menelik was crowned king of Ethiopia. According to one Ethiopian tradition, Menelik was born at Mybelah, near the village of Abishmane, located in the northwest of Samara. So,
Well, let's go down just a little bit.
Sure.
See, just the dynasty. I just want everybody to see. According to the legend, Menelik I founded the Solomonic dynasty of Ethiopia that ruled Ethiopia with few interruptions for close to 3,000 years. All right, so now this story about the Ark going to Ethiopia, this is something that is big in Ethiopia, okay? The Ark symbolism, they have parades with the Ark. Let's pull up that church. Yeah. Now, this is from the Jerusalem Post, okay? Now, when we're looking at this church, this is where supposedly the Ark is kept with one priest inside at all times.
What a pretty building. Dome and spire type-esque.
And and Robert Sefer mentioned this in his video as well.
So this is really, really cool here. I'm sorry, I'm still starstruck by this because I'm very interested. I'd never heard anything about anybody named Menelik. I was so leaned to the side of the Queen of the South being some type of spiritual entity that
I'd never heard that until you just mentioned it just now. I'd never heard that before.
Really? Yeah. That was an original thought of mine. I mean, that's nobody put that in my head or anything. I really leaned that direction until just the other night when you showed me this. I was like, oh no, this is like a real person.
Yeah.
So this reads, where is the Ark of the Covenant, the vessel that according to Jewish tradition and the Bible safeguarded the tablets of the covenant? The gold-coated ark, adorned with a gold wreath, once resided in the first temple until the Babylonian army's destruction in 587 BC. While records don't mention its fate, it's improbable that such a sacred and precious object disappeared unnoticed. And that is a solid point. There's so many theories, man. It went up with Elijah. Jeremiah hid it. It's just crazy. So did it survive the destruction? And if so, where does it rest today? The Ark, also known as the Ark of God, the Ark of Testimony, was positioned within the Holy of Holies in the first temple. It held immense significance, described as the primary seat. Didn't even want to read.
Yeah, so, no, I don't even want to mention that on here. This is a bunch of garbage. But There's the Cathedral of Our Lady of Mount Zion, and it's in the, I believe it's in the building across from that, if I'm not mistaken, according to the Ethiopians. And guys, there's a lot of documentaries on this, a lot of crazy things around this area in Axum. I invite anybody to go check this out. There's a lot of stories in Ethiopia about this. And it may or may not be there. I know Ron Wyatt said that he found it under Calvary and all this type of stuff, but it's definitely worth the research. There's several documentaries on it, interviews. We're going to keep on Solomon for right now, but I just wanted to point this out to everybody, this story about Sheba and Menelik and the Solomonic dynasty that lasted for almost 3,000 years, and still to this day, they claim the ark is here.
Mm. That is very interesting, man.
All right, brother, what we got next?
Well, what next is we've got a Bible verse. We're back into 1 Kings 11:1. So we've talked about
back to all these women.
Yeah, man.
And I can relate to Solomon on this, especially me as a young man. It was my downfall. Women were my downfall and led me into so much sin. Not that they were leading me into it. I led myself like a slobbering dog into it. Just consumed by lust. So I can understand Solomon. If I was in Solomon's position, you'd probably be reading a lot of the same things about me, especially if I had that kind of power at 15 years old.
Oh God.
So, yeah.
Watch out.
So I've always related to Solomon and David and that type of thing. Just being an imperfect person myself, we're all imperfect. But man, 700 wives and 300 concubines, man, that's a little overboard, even for me.
It makes me wonder when we're listening to that story about the water and the dinner. It's almost like he was just waiting for somebody to turn him down. Like I know, maybe whatever. It's just how I feel about it. It's like it's just, is there
what does the man with everything want? Whatever he can't have.
Exactly. Exactly right. And so he is the same one that wrote it
for the rest of us, pal.
Yeah. Yeah, right. He's the same one that wrote in Proverbs that when it comes to sleeping with a stranger, it is many great men have fallen to this poisonous loaf of bread. It's he knew. You know what I'm saying? He knew.
I mean, half, not half, but a good portion of Proverbs is warning against promiscuous women.
Yeah.
Don't even go by her door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Her bed is like, will take you down to the grave, basically.
Exactly.
It ended up doing that to him. It was as a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. It's so sad.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah, it sure is.
Let's read a little bit of this, man, and then we'll get into this. Is going to lead us into our esoteric portion. So if you guys, I know we've covered a little bit of esoteric stuff because there's a lot there. There's some we're going to leave out of this video just because it's very mystical in nature, and I believe it's sinful. We are going to get into one of the texts that shows us something interesting, but we're not going to take it too deep. So if you guys want to hang around, cool. If you don't want to hear about it at all, now's a good time to say goodnight. We love you and we understand. But we're about to get into some of the more esoteric stuff as we go here. All right, let's go ahead and read some.
Here we go, man. 1 Kings 11:1. King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, Ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. And Solomon clave unto these in love. Poor guy. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart, and after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord, as David his father did. Then did Solomon build a high place for Shemosh, the abomination of Moab, and the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods. And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice. Jeez, that's so scary. And had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods. But he kept not that which the Lord commanded. Wherefore the Lord said unto Solomon, Forasmuch as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee. If you're not familiar, it just means he's going to rip. Rend just means to tear. And I will give it to thy servant. Notwithstanding in thy days, I will do it not for David thy father's sake, but I will rend it out of thy hand of thy son. Howbeit, I will not rend away all of the kingdom, but I will give one tribe to your son, for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen. And so Solomon...
So we're seeing here, and it goes down through all these false gods, the abominations of the Moabs and the Ammonites and everything. He turned away because for the love of these foreign women that brought with them their foreign gods.
And the sad thing is we have no proof. I don't think anyone has any proof of Solomon ever turning around. And this is what I was kind of getting towards earlier when I was talking about some of these mystery religions and mysticism, esoteric schools, whatever you want to call them. I think some of their love for Solomon is that on the light side, on the Christian side, we view Nebuchadnezzar and Paul. We love these guys because they were so low that their rise up to God is that much higher because they started so low, and murderers and thieving and et cetera, et cetera. Solomon was so high. To stoop so low is just such a fall that I feel like, we always say, this is thus thinketh Bronson here. We always say some of the best Christians were once the worst people. And it makes me wonder if some of the worst people were once the best Christians. You know what I mean? I mean, how great a fall is that, from someone to have that type of place of Solomon and to have all that power, to have all those trade routes, to have such control over God's holy land. And this is what happened to him. And it's just sad, man, because we see in the beginning, we saw it in the very beginning that there was no place, there was no temple. And so he was already burning incense and making sacrifices.
Yeah, he had a heart fully after God, and then eventually loved many strange women together with the daughter of Pharaoh, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, the Zidonians, and the Hittites. I don't even know if he really shouldn't have married the daughter of Pharaoh, to be honest with you.
Maybe not.
I mean, what does Pharaoh mean?
Was it God King?
Right.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? It's that Sumerian divine right to rule, the throne is descended from heaven to earth. So I mean, it's a Nephilim throne, more or less.
Right. Probably should have left that girl alone.
Right. And so that started it out, and then he went into the Moabite women, the Ammonite women, and all these women from all these other tribes and nations that they weren't supposed to have anything to do with. Anything to do with.
And what's sad is he seems to have made it. You know what I'm saying? He made it a long time. And it says that once he got up into his years a little bit, it just broke him, dude. I mean, it's just, you can only deal with that so long with 700 people in your ear about who knows what they're talking about. Well, I don't know. I'm not even going to speculate on that, but I can't imagine.
It was with 1,000 of them he had to deal with all the time. He must have not only been wise, but super patient.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Well, God.
That's
the more I think about it, the more it sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, no. 2,000 in-laws? Are you kidding me? No, I'm good on that, bro.
Yeah.
Way.
Well, I tell you what, man. Let's get into this a little bit, and so let's see some of these the more esoteric things. There's what we got next, man?
This is going to be the Testament of Solomon. And so, again, if you made it this far, you're probably already familiar with this. If you're not, this is one of those texts that I personally, I don't know how Austin feels about it. I haven't asked him about it. I personally, I do not hold this to very much high esteem. I think there's some very interesting concepts in here. There may be some grains of truth, but all in all, this to me is not something that I would, put a whole lot of truth into.
No, but a lot of the legends about Solomon come from this text.
Super famous. Everyone knows it. Non-believers, everybody.
Yes, especially people that are involved in mysticism or anything like that.
Mhm.
It's it's thought to have been around the 1st century AD when it was written. Some people put it back a little bit further. We actually have there are some people that think that Jesus even referenced this, and I'll tell you what. Let's play that clip real quick, and then we'll
Man.
just to show that there is people out there. And let's see, this one right here.
Yeah. Here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can't restart it for us.
Luke, the Pharisees accused Jesus of casting out demons by Beelzebub. And Jesus says if he cast out demons by
All right, let's
Beelzebub,
start
why aren't
over.
they casting out any demons?
Sure. It's weird. So I'm going to play it from the very, very end.
In the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, the Pharisees accused Jesus of casting out demons by Beelzebub. And Jesus says if he cast out demons by Beelzebub, why aren't they casting out any demons? And then immediately after this, he says the Queen of the South came to visit Solomon to see his wisdom. And behold, someone greater than Solomon is here. So the question is, why, when the focus was about casting out demons by Beelzebub, does he then switch over to talk about Solomon's wisdom? It seems random. However, in the Testament of Solomon, Solomon has great wisdom given to him by God, and amongst that great wisdom, Solomon is given the power and authority to cast out demons by the power of Beelzebub. So Jesus appears to be endorsing the story of Solomon, the Testament of Solomon, by connecting Solomon with the power of casting out demons by Beelzebub. Therefore, according to Jesus, the Testament of Solomon is scripture. In the gospel.
All right. Yeah. I'll give mine on it unless you want to go first, because
Go right ahead.
I get what he's saying. I really do, and I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo on this guy, but I will say to start my piece here is that same scripture that he's referring to in the Gospels is the scripture I use to say maybe the Queen of Sheba wasn't human, because we're talking about casting out demons, and all of a sudden he's like, well, the Queen of Sheba came over, and I was like, oh, okay, so maybe there is some spiritism here. So that's kind of where my theory was coming from, in case anybody was curious. But this is I don't think Jesus would say what he's saying, that you could endorse casting out spirits by Beelzebub. I think it's possible to be done.
Well, that's not what's happening in the Testament of Solomon, anyways. He's not casting out anything.
Exactly.
That number one.
Exactly.
Now, with that reference made, that reference is made, and we can pull it up if you'd like, but that reference, is made. So it makes me wonder if there was some sort of text that had, whether it's a version of the Testament of Solomon or something completely different, that Solomon was controlling demons or had some kind of interaction with Beelzebub or something to that effect. It lends to thinking that there's a text that we're missing here. But the way he phrases it is Solomon was casting out demons with the power of Beelzebub. That's not what's going on in the Testament of Solomon. Now, I can see where he would make that connection with Beelzebub, because Beelzebub's mentioned heavy, and we're about to go to the text and show some of that. But that's not what's happening in the Testament of Solomon. Just a quick rundown. What's happening is that he gets a ring from God that's given to him by the archangel Michael, that has a seal on it that contains the true name of God. And he uses this ring to control demons to help build the temple and do other tasks. So it's not casting demons out of anybody at all. It's using this power of this ring that was supposedly given to Solomon through Michael to control these demons. So nothing's getting cast out.
Yes.
Do you want to read a little bit from this, and we'll?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
What, let's play that other clip real quick, just to give a quick rundown, and then we'll go back to the text.
Great idea.
Ever heard of King Solomon's ring? Legend says it wasn't just for bling. Why? It was the seal of Solomon, a magical artifact whispered to control demons, unlock secret knowledge, even talk to animals. But is any of this true, or is it just a captivating myth? Some say the seal was a pentagram, others a hexagram, a real symbol lost to history. However, we do know that this seal was mentioned in ancient texts like the Testament of Solomon, where it's said to be engraved with the true name of God. This powerful inscription supposedly gave Solomon dominion over all creatures. And what about that connection to the Star of David? While not directly related, six-pointed star does appear in ancient Jewish texts and may have been inspired by similar mystical symbols. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more history.
And they do not play. You ever hang out with some witches or some Satanists? I used to know this guy. He really wanted to be a Satanist, something fierce, but he gave it his best shot. he wore the seal of Solomon on his chest.
Yeah.
On a necklace.
Yeah, a necklace. I was about to say, yeah, I've been around a lot of people that are into witchcraft wear this seal of Solomon to protect them from demons while they're doing witchcraft, which is just silly to me. Because, I mean, Solomon couldn't be protected himself. It's
so inverted. You know, we always say, well, the demons and spirits, and I've heard so many Christians say this, and I believe there's a lot of truth to it, that, you know, well, that stuff can't touch you, man. You're a child of God. It can't mess with you. You're a child of God, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, that's a joke.
Yep, that's a fact. And so when you have in the Christian theology that you are protected by the Most High of the Most High, the King of Kings, anything under it can't touch you and without the authority of the Most High. And so to what I understand from the time I've spent around these darker people is they believe something very similar. If I can be in touch with the highest of demons, all the other ones can't mess with me without his permission. And so I'm safe from the demons. You know what I'm trying to say? It's inverted. It's just kind of twisted, but it's we'll go back over here and just kind of read some things.
Well, from what I understand, just from my experience with it, is that they use these sigils, whether it's a pentagram, hexagram, circles of salt, the seal of Solomon necklaces, the Kabbalah red wristband. It's to protection from these spirits, and somehow these sigils can protect you from these powerful demonic and fallen angels that have been around for millennia at least. I'm sorry, man. If you think that that's really doing anything for you, you're playing yourself.
Oh yeah,
and they're playing you.
Right.
You don't. It's just not something to play with. But let's get into this. We said we cover it, so we're going to cover this. This is where a lot of this stuff comes from. If you want to read a couple excerpts just to show.
For sure. We'll just open up in the very beginning with the Testament of Solomon, son of David, who is the king of Jerusalem.
I'm sorry. Could we zoom in just a little bit, man?
I will do my very best. Here we go.
And guys, this is the Testament of Solomon. Is this on Sacred Text?
I'm on the Esoteric Archives as well.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So if you guys want to follow along with us, we're on the Esoteric Archives, Testament of Solomon.
Yes. So here we are, the Testament of Solomon, son of David, who was king in Jerusalem and mastered and controlled all spirits of the air, on the earth and under the earth. By means of them also, he wrought all transcendent works of the temple, telling also of the authorities that they held against men, and by what angels these demons are brought to naught. And this is one of the most confusing books in the beginning. It really messed me up in the beginning because it uses certain terminology, like down here in verse 5. Now, when I, Solomon, heard this, I entered the temple of God and prayed with all my soul night and day, that the demon might be delivered into my hands, and that I might gain authority over him. And it came about through my prayer that grace was given to me from the Lord of Sabaoth, that by Michael and his archangel. Now, Sabaoth is not a term used very often at all in the Bible, And the only place I can recall on the top of my head is in the book of James. And I don't know of any other place in the Bible that calls the Lord of Sabaoth. And so when you hear that, and it's used quite a bit, here it is again, the highest Sabaoth. The Lord of the Sabbath is what I think that means. Feel free to ridicule me and correct me in the comments. I'll take it with a smile. It's good. And this engraving of the seal, this is, he gets this ring, like Austin said, it's engraved with a stone, and Michael gives it to him. And so there's all sorts of places in the book where Solomon stops, and here we are. I was overjoyed and praised and glorified the God of heaven and earth. And it happens a lot where he prostrates himself to the Lord, and he, gives thanks and gives glory. And so when you're listening to it, you're like, man, this really seems like Solomon's doing the right thing here. You know what I'm saying? And, the problem with it is, and my biggest thing, I think the easiest thing to point out that the problem with it is that I would not put it on the same scale as Scripture, and I do not think Christ would have endorsed it, is that you get these dialogues that there's a pattern with, where he talks to him and says, well, what star do you hang out under, and where do you find yourselves in the heavens? And so like right here, verse 23, is this your only business? And then he answers Solomon and says, I transport men into fits of madness and desire when they have their own sin. So they leave them and go off by night and day to others that belong to other men, and they commit and they fall into murderous deeds. And so he's talking about, and then here Solomon corrects him and says, you fear the Lord of Sabaoth, fear God, Asmodeus, and tell me by what angel you are frustrated. And the angel tells him by Raphael. And so they always give these weird things. And this is one of the weirdest ones. This is kind of an obscure example, but it's an example nonetheless. It says, the liver and the gall of a fish put me to flight when they're smoked over the tamarisk. And then he tells him later what type of fish he just really doesn't like. It's the glanos. So, that's the, I guess. And if it's found in the rivers of Assyria, boy, I just hate that fish. And if you burn it, I'm out of there. You know what I mean? And so these are the things that I don't like about the book, is that the solution to the problem is not prayer. It's not fasting. It's not the name of Christ, or even
it's a ritual.
Yes, and sometimes it's calling on the name of angels like Uriel or Raphael or Michael, and there's one angel in the book.
There's a lot of it. I mean, as we go, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but as we go along, you have a certain, whether it's a demon or a fallen angel, that says that, he asks, what angel frustrates you? Instead of it being Raphael, he says is the one that will come be born of a virgin and die on the cross, talking about Jesus. So I think that was, an indication of when this was actually written.
I think so too, and so this is my next kind of issue with the book, is that there is a place here, and I don't have it highlighted, and I'll tell you why I chose not to highlight it, is because the verbiage makes it out to be like this Emmanuel. I've got it highlighted here on the screen right quick that says, by the holy and the precious name of the Almighty God. Now that's pretty good. He's calling Emmanuel the Almighty God. That's pretty good. You're calling Jesus God. That, there it is. But again, it doesn't quite fit with Scripture, because remember, in Scripture, spirits of evil have a hard time calling Jesus God and saying that he's come into the earth and been, resurrected and all. But that's beyond the point. There's a section in the book that really kind of makes Emmanuel sound like he's an angel. And it kind of messes with the whole flow of things, and I don't like that. When you start calling Jesus just another angel, I think you start falling into some problems here. You know what I mean? Here's another.
Yeah, it gives you another ritual, and you will see the heavenly dragons. How they, I can't tell what that says.
Oh yeah, how they probably divide themselves.
How they wind themselves along and drag the chariot of the sun.
Yeah, that verse stuck with me big time the first time I read this. It was like, what? The dragons carrying the sun? And, sun chariots is big in every culture. I mean, you know what I'm saying? There's always somebody who's driving the chariot of the sun.
Whether it's Ra or whoever it may be.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I mean,
There's
it's crazy.
quite a bit of things. Do we have the?
I sure do. I will find it in just a minute. Matter of fact, let me just zoom out just for a second. I'll get it real quick for us so we don't have to keep the audience waiting. If you've made it this far, man, you are awesome.
Even if it took you, a couple of days and you watch it in 10, 15-minute segments, we do that a lot too. We watch a lot of long form videos, and we'll watch in between, when there's nobody around at work, go ahead and play it while we're working.
Right. That's the tricky part, is that you got somebody at work and they're like, dude, what are you listening to? I go, so here down in whatever chapter this is, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you, but it's titled 34. Okay, this is really, really, really neat.
Zazel right there. And I summoned the archangel Zazel and set a seal on the demon and commanded him to seize great stones and toss them up to the workmen on the higher parts of the temple. Yeah. So that's what we're looking at here. And down here in, I guess, verse 34, it goes into talking about these 7 spirits, these 7 sisters that are supposed to represent the Pleiades.
Yes. I think most people agree that that's the Pleiades here. And I'll read it if you want me to, but
no, that's okay, man. We don't have to go into it too deep. I think the people get the point. But this is where a lot of the legends of Solomon come from.
Right. It's and then honestly, in my opinion, this is one of the more tamer books that you can find. I don't really have a problem reading it. It doesn't mess with me too bad.
No, just go into it knowing that it's more or less just fan fiction, but you do get the some of the concepts are valuable, like the spirits having relations to things in the heavenly.
Yes.
The different constellations, and always throughout time, constellations for worship. Think about what are the so-called planets named after now.
Right.
They're named after the pantheon of pagan gods.
Yes.
You know what I mean? What are all the NASA space shuttles named after? Pagan gods and demigods. Apollo. It's, in Revelation, Apollo is the beast, the angel of the bottomless pit. Mm-hmm. So that's where all this stuff comes from, and there is a connection between these demonic forces on Earth and forces in high places in the second heaven. So I think that's one of the most valuable things you can pull from this book, is just that concept of things in the second heaven and the star systems and all that type of stuff being related to these spiritual forces and them being intertwined.
Yes.
That's probably the most valuable concept you can pull out of this book.
I would say that Albert Pike and Manly P. Hall would agree to that too. I mean, when we were reading through them the other night, I was seeing quite a bit of things where they're referring to constellations and how the temple, reflects some of those things and gods.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at all the ancient architecture, it all aligns with in Giza with Orion's belt. And as a matter of fact, there was like a 12-year-old boy that found a ancient megalithic structure just by looking at these star charts and lining up where things should be. And it was like in the middle of the Amazon forest. They found this megalithic structure nobody else had found, just because he said, man, this constellation is right above here, just with everything else lining up with it. So it makes sense for something to be right here. And then they found it just off of that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I think we'll probably do it, cover that in another episode, talking about ancient pyramids or something like that. But that's, they found it that way. So there's definitely a connection between this ancient architecture, these spiritual forces, and the constellations and the luminaries. There's definitely a connection, and you definitely get a good idea of the concept, at least the way it was understood by the writer of Testament of Solomon in the Testament of Solomon.
Yes.
It covers it constantly. You can't miss it.
Yes. Oh, and I'm glad you said that, because I meant to say this earlier. I'm so glad you said that, because I wanted to say this just in case. When we're talking about the Testament of Solomon, this is not like the Gospel of Matthew or Isaiah or Jeremiah, there's only so many manuscripts. You know what I'm saying? Whereas Jeremiah, Isaiah, Matthew, there's thousands of manuscripts that can be cross-referenced and understood. And so that's why I'm so glad you said that, so I could remember to say this, that because there's only so many manuscripts, it's hard to tell. You can only do your best to do a real good translation to move it over from the Greek and all the other places that these manuscripts were found. And so I wanted to approach that situation where they're calling Emmanuel an angel very, very carefully, because that might not be fair to this text. Truly, it might not be fair to it. So,
let's just say this, like, read it for the entertainment value, but read it for like some of the concepts, but the actual text and the what they're pushing here, I wouldn't put any stock into it.
right.
It's a cool story. It's an interesting story. It references demonic forces and forces from the dark side that are actually mentioned in the Bible.
Right.
So I mean, they are referenced, but anything outside of just like some of the concepts and just reading it like you would a fictional story, I would just Astaroth,
But that's the angel that frustrates her, and Astaroth is, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's
right. That's what I mean. Like, there's nothing of value you can take outside of some of the concepts. The actual body of it and what it says, it's, at least I don't find any of it to be true.
Yeah.
Like I said, you just read it as like a demonology fan fiction if you're going into it. Just in my opinion and my advice, take it for what it's worth. All right, what do we got coming up next, sir?
This is some more texts, and
all right, they have the Keys of Solomon, the books and grimoires, which are just magical books, books that contain spells and rituals and like demonology. One is called the Lesser Key of Solomon. So let's hear what she has to say about it.
Let's do it, man.
Lesser Key of Solomon, also known as the Clavicula Salomonis Regis. The Lesser Key of Solomon is believed to be a cursed grimoire of demonology that should absolutely never be toyed with. Inside the cursed book, you can apparently find recipes for love potions or liquors of persuasion, and if that isn't quite up your alley, do not fret. It's also said to contain passages on how to conjure spirits and demons, as well as how to control these entities to do your bidding. Cool. But either way, this is not a book you should be snooping around inside, as it's reportedly so cursed that it will doom anyone who so much as has it on their bookshelf. A Lesser Key of Solomon, also known.
And that's over on the witch talk, TikTok for witches. Boy, the things they do to people is just so disgustingly gross. It's just so gross. When I won't even get into the nitty-gritty details, but the things they do for their love potions, you would think it would be dandelions,
little starfire action.
Yeah, they sneak it into your food and stuff.
Yeah,
yeah, dude. Watch these. If you're a single man, I hear you better watch these women, and women too. Watch the single men.
Yeah, man. I'm to the point where I don't want to eat anything unless I make it. Yeah, it's a lot of gross stuff out here, but Solomon is used, and you get a lot of books about like Enochian mysticism and stuff like that comes out of the John Dees and Eliphas Levi. We're not going to read out of the Keys of Solomon just for the simple fact that it's not a good book, but just to show that, hey, it is out there. These are attributed to Solomon. I highly doubt it was Solomon, but you never know. Let's go on to the next one.
So this is here, like Austin said, we're not going to read too much, but this is probably one of the lighter things that you can find in Solomon's type of esoteric text, where you have, I'll just zoom in the best I can here.
About Solomon's flying carpet. And this is from Fables and Legends of the Quran. And it just kind of goes through talking about how Solomon would make this almost like a platform out of wood, and it would levitate.
Yeah, man.
Control the winds. Yeah.
He was moving fast, bro. Fast. So I don't know. I mean, I know that the powers of the dark side can do some pretty wild stuff, but yeah, man, that's about as much as I can say to that. Without, I don't want to give glory to the dark side, but they,
Right.
you can see it in Samuel. I mean,
Well,
they
let's pull up one of these. Let's pull up one of the texts because in this text. Let's go to the next thing. In this text, it shows. Oh, do we not have it up?
What are you looking for?
The instructions on how to make your flying carpet.
I think
it's not in this.
Oh, okay, got you. Okay, then I don't know why it wouldn't be on this one, but maybe we closed it just to not read it, but I don't recall closing it. It's I remember it okay. I mean,
Let's go to the email and pull it up because this is just to tie into this. There's legends about Solomon that stretch all kinds of different crazy things. Like he was able to talk to the birds and all animals in general. They're the flying carpets, the controlling of demons, these magical spells that are supposed to come down from him, all kinds of stuff like that. All right, let's see. No, not that one.
How to make.
This is from the Key of Solomon. Now, this isn't from the Lesser Keys. I believe this is from a different one by the Key of Solomon, Book 1. So we won't read too far into it. And, guys, don't read any of this stuff out loud because this is like, as it goes down, it's giving you basically magical incantations of what to say and everything else. But you're supposed to call upon Michael and all this. So, yeah, this is basically instructions on how to make, and don't read the prayer. Don't read it out loud. Just my suggestion. But this is basically instructions on how to make this magic carpet. So we can get off it now, but I just wanted to show people that, hey, it is there. That's where it comes from.
Yeah, it's man. I hate that stuff is done this way because, on the contrary, we've had so many videos where you and we've talked about the ether. We've talked about prayers and miracles and the things that God can do and will do and has done before. And it's just sad that somebody as great as Solomon had taken such a fall to where these things are attributed to him. Whether it's true or not, it's still attributed to him. And it, unfortunately for him, he created a reputation where these things can be attributed to his name. Whether it's true or not, we can look at this and say, well, it's likely, it's possible. Solomon could have done this.
Think about what he did, man. He built all these high places and worship sites to these demons in the Most High's land, in what we call the Holy Land. I mean, you're mixing hot with cold. You're mixing holy and profane. You're doing all the things that God hates.
Right.
To become lukewarm, well, you worship him out of one side of your mouth, and then the other side of your mouth, you're giving praise to Shemosh and passing your kids through the fire to Moloch and bringing all these women into your house with these pagan beliefs. And you talk about soul ties. You know what I mean? I'm not wanting to tie my soul to a woman that passes their children through the fire.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That just all the wickedness it brought on, it's really abhorrent what he was doing, building up these places. Especially after having contact with God on 2 different occasions, it said, and being granted all these blessings, and I mean, your father was King David. You know what I mean? And this is what you do.
Yeah,
it's pretty abhorrent, man. All right, let's go on to the next thing, brother.
Yeah.
All right.
Try to back it up just a little bit.
And in the Bible, King Solomon's death wasn't really covered, so this right here gives a pretty good overview of what we've been talking about tonight, and I figured we would play it to head out to our closing message here.
Was King Solomon's death natural or a punishment from God? King Solomon ruled over Israel for 40 years. He built the magnificent temple in Jerusalem and amassed a fortune of gold. He was renowned for his wisdom and justice. But he also had a weakness. He loved many foreign women who turned his heart away from God. He built altars for their idols and worshiped them, angering the Lord. God said to him, "Because you have done this, I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to your servant." The Bible doesn't say how he died, but some say he died of old age, some say he died of regret, and some say he was killed by enemies. Was King Solomon's death natural or a punishment from...
Yeah, that's something that I don't have much of an opinion on or even much thoughts on about how he died. I mean, do you have much there?
The main thing is that when God says if he'd follow his commandments, that he would, his life would be long. And it doesn't appear that he lived past around 55 years old. So I think that, that was a punishment in itself, not a punishment, but, he didn't follow like he was supposed to follow with all his heart like David did. So he wasn't long in years. And, let's go to our closing message here. We found this, I thought it was beautifully written and gives us a good message to kind of close out after a lot of that kind of dark stuff and esoteric stuff. Bronson, if you want to go ahead and go through this, let's close it out with this.
Absolutely.
Unlike Solomon, finish well.
Yes. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God. And the heart of David, his father, had been. There was certain military leader in the Revolutionary War who impressed General Washington so much that he nicknamed him the Fighting General. George Washington's fighting general successfully attacked and captured Fort Ticonderoga from the British in 1775. In 1776, this general led a successful campaign to keep the British from invading the colonies through the Lake Sheba region. And his greatest victory was at Saratoga in 1777, which led to the French coming into the war as America's most important allies. What was this hero's name? Benedict Arnold. Yes, Benedict Arnold was a brilliant general during the early years of the Revolutionary War. But on September 25th, 1780, he defected to the British side. And ever since that day, Benedict Arnold's name has been synonymous with being a traitor. Although Benedict Arnold did some marvelous things for our country, they will always be overshadowed by his treachery. Sadly, Benedict Arnold ended his military career very, very poorly. Simply put, he didn't finish well. The same could be said of King Solomon. The first 10 chapters of the First Kings are, for the most part, very encouraging. Solomon was a man blessed by God with incredible wisdom and wealth, and he was a gifted leader and impressive orator, and most importantly, a faithful follower of God. But as he came down to the home stretch of his life, he failed miserably. Although he had the IQ of 2 Einsteins, the riches of 4 Donald Trumps, and the wisdom of 10 Zig Ziglars, 1 Kings 11 reveals that Solomon finished his life very poorly. In the words of the Bible commentator Dale Ralph Davis, chapter 11 is the dull thud after the high hopes of chapters 1 through 10. Instead of ending on a high note, Solomon's life ended with a dull thud. And the biggest reason for this was his divided loyalty. You see, Solomon's 40-year reign began and ended with love. Unfortunately, during those 40 years, his love shifted. At the start of his reign, we read these encouraging words. Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the statutes of his father David. Yet, by the time we get to the end of Solomon's reign, we read that Solomon loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with them. They will surely turn your hearts after their gods." We are then told in verse 3 that Solomon had 700 foreign wives, in addition to his 300 concubines, and they pulled his heart away from the Lord and toward their pagan god. Solomon still loved God with part of his heart, but tragically, he divvied up the rest of his heart into 700 pieces that he distributed amongst the idol-worshipping wives. According to Jesus, the greatest command in the Old Testament is, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Without a doubt, as time passed, Solomon drifted from his first love. God, it's so sad that I could cry. He no longer loved God with all his heart, all his soul, all his mind, or all his strength. In our melting pot culture, some might ask, what's the big deal? Well, consider this. We read in 1 Kings 11 that on a hill east of Jerusalem, most likely the Mount of Olives, Solomon set up worship centers to Ashtaroth, Moloch, Shemosh. Ashtaroth worship traditionally involved orgies with male and female prostitutes. Moloch worship involved child sacrifice, and Shemosh worship involved forms of human sacrifice. Although Solomon probably didn't participate in these more heinous worship activities, they were an integral part of the religion back in his wife's homeland. And regardless of what labels we affix to ritual prostitution and child sacrifice, they are at their heart demonic. On that very same hill of Jerusalem, where Jesus would one day sweat drops of blood and pray, "Not my will, but yours be done," Solomon was building shrines to bloodthirsty demons. On the same hill where Jesus would receive a kiss of betrayal from one of his friends, King Solomon himself was betraying his first love. On the same hill where Jesus would be bound and led away to sacrifice his own life for you and me, Solomon was worshiping murderous demons who required parents to sacrifice their own innocent children in a sacrificial fire. Was Solomon's idol worship a big deal? You better believe it was. And even though God rebuked Solomon and warned him that judgment was coming, Solomon didn't respond with humility, sorrow, or repentance. There is no indication that Solomon ever repented from his idol worship or tore down the pagan altars. He finished his life surrounded by hundreds of beautiful women, untold riches, and every type of pleasure that a person could ever desire. But he died a shell of a man, empty, hopeless, and full of regret, like Benedict Arnold. Although he was a man of great potential who started his adult years so well, Solomon finished his life so poorly. When our loved ones look back on our final years here on earth, will they say the same of you and me? I sure hope not. Let's finish well. Dude, I started to cry reading that, man. That's just so powerful, bro. That's just so strong. Wow. In the world of martial arts, we call them shooting stars. They come in, you spend so many hours outside looking for a shooting star on the night of a meteor shower. And if you look the wrong way, you'll miss one. They're so fast. And when you see one, it's like, I've waited for hours. And you see it, it's just so bright and it's beautiful. And by the time you actually see it and know what you're looking at, it fades out and it's gone. And that's, I feel so bad for... Yeah, I just hate that. But anyway, dude, my heart's kind of flooded on that. I'm going to let you talk a little bit while I regain my posture here and get my man.
Well, I appreciate you reading all that. I know it's a mouthful, but I thought it was important to show some similarities, in that between Benedict Arnold, who started out strong but ended up being a traitor to what he once stood so strong for. The same thing with Solomon. He was responsible for building the temple, the house of God, and to ruling over God's people in the Holy Land. And he ended up being a traitor. And in Hosea, it calls it, a prostitution. He prostituted himself. He whored himself out to other gods and betrayed the Most High that had entrusted him with everything. I mean, literally everything you could have back then. And it's a sign to us to finish the race strong, to stay on that straight and narrow path, to to follow to follow the laws of God, and to not stray off that path, because even one little thing can snowball, and you'll wake up one day like, man, what has my life become? And you could trace it back to that one decision you made and that one sin you made. I know it's happened to me. I'm talking from firsthand experience. This can happen. I mean, I told you, I relate to Solomon in a lot of ways. You know, there's love for women and falling off the path and not doing what I was supposed to do. I'm just glad that I've been able to flip it around. You know what I mean? And I'm going to do my best to finish well, to finish strong, to run the good race, and that's what we all need to do.
Wow.
To look at Solomon as an example that no matter how blessed we are, no matter how hard we're walking after God, that there are pitfalls out there, and if we don't stick, follow the 10 Commandments at the very least, just follow the 10 Commandments and follow after what our Father says. Your Father tells you things for a reason, because he wants the best for you. And if we stray off that path, especially knowingly sinning, it leads to destruction, and it can lead to destruction real quick. So let's use Solomon as an example. Stay on the straight and narrow path, and follow after the Most High God with all of our heart.
Thank you so much, Austin, man. You did a fantastic job putting this video together tonight. I know you worked tirelessly getting content and videos and excuse me, links and scriptures and texts and all sorts of things, man. So I really do appreciate it.
I tell you, man, the hardest part of it, I know this is a long video, guys. The hardest part was just trying to narrow it down. There's a lot. There's a lot of there. Sometimes we cover videos like the 4 Horsemen video. Believe it or not, there's not a whole lot out there. YouTube kind of got us with the algorithm on that one. The impressions are just low. So if you guys want to go check that out, but there's not a lot on that. There's just nothing worth a crap, really. To be honest with you, there's a lot of like weird stuff that doesn't make any sense and that has no kind of context or text to go back to. But with Solomon, it's a total opposite. There is so much, and there's so much weirdness and so many texts and magical grimoires and demonology books that are attributed to Solomon that really the tough part was cutting out and just trying to give it a cohesive message to it. But really, that's the message, is just to finish strong, guys. And if you made it throughout this whole video, we appreciate you guys, and we love you guys. Be looking out for some more reaction videos. We just dropped one tonight as a recording, so if you guys see that one on old Lil KC, Kenneth Copeland, we did some reactions to him. We got some music reactions coming out. We're going to be right back in our Genesis commentary, continuing our Abraham story. We basically covered just the early life of Abraham in our last video, Abraham in the House of Idols. And we're going to be continuing that in our next full-length video. But we got a lot of stuff coming out, guys. So just stay tuned and like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much, and we will see you next time on Ancient Echoes.